I chose this particular, after a long research, that this could be my workspace, and then I started to put a team together. We've done years of research, and our biggest achievements have been really setting up some nature business exemplars. And I will tell you a couple of stories. I don't know if you all have heard of something called as kokum. Kokum is a fruit which grows in the Western Ghats, in the west coast of India. The fruit itself is used in making squashes and juice, and it's also anti-diabetic. It comes from the Garcinia family. But in the past, maybe 70, 80 years ago, they used to use these seeds to extract a butter, and that butter was antiseptic, antibacterial. It had some phenomenal properties for the skin as well as oral for the hair. So what we did is we revived this practice of butter extraction here, and then over a project we got some help from the Indian Institute of Science. We do a lot of collaborations. They came and helped us over to extract this butter. Once we extracted this butter, we got into a collaboration with a Brazilian individual, an entrepreneur there. We said we want to go up the value chain, and so we want to create natural cosmetics with kokum butter as the base ingredient. So we started these workshops, a series of workshops. We did about 3 to 4 workshops where this team from Brazil came and actually involved the local community. We trained about 20 people locally to create natural cosmetics. So we are in a position today, we've created about 18 products, and now we want to go and create a natural cosmetics company and then go into e-commerce and actually become a natural cosmetics. So the point I'm making is, if you are respectful to nature, it gives you opportunities to create businesses, you can involve the community, you can create livelihoods, and you potentially can scale such a business. So this is one story, and I have a couple of more stories if you wish to hear.
We'll come back to you. So yes, you did highlight the role of grassroots level, organizations working with the frontline communities. I'll turn to Mr. Sriram now. Sriram, UNFPA, again, very committed to gender issues. I was hoping that Mr. Shetty would talk more about women and what is being done. So now over to you to really understand how, at UNFPA, are you approaching gender equity issues? How are you really ensuring that the climate impact, which women are feeling the most, is actually, whatever strategies we're coming out with, we're keeping that front and center. I want you to share a few successes, really, because I think we're all looking for solutions that are really scalable. So, and again, not just successes, if they're things that haven't failed, but they're important learnings. I think all of us are bold enough to also, talk about that. So over to you.
Thanks, Deepali. For those of who are not very familiar with UNFPA, I am from United Nations Population Fund. We have been operating in India since 1974. Our major 3 transformative goals are a world where there is zero unmet need for family planning, zero preventable maternal deaths, and zero gender-based violence and harmful practices. Deepali, this session is titled aptly as the new frontiers, but you have asked me a question about a frontier which has not given enough attention, the gender impacts of climate change. You summed it up in your opening remarks, like in any disasters, the impact of climate change, whether we like it or not, unfortunately, disproportionately affects women and girls, and that's the ground reality we all live in. I often tell in meetings and other forums I attend, yes, there is a disaster, there is a climate change disaster, you can close your schools, but women don't stop giving birth, they don't stop menstruating. That's the ground realities. So they are disproportionately affected. Some of the other example I have is all through the world. We have enough ample evidence when there is a climate disaster, man-made or natural disaster, the rate of gender-based violence goes up. We have seen in crisis situations where child marriage goes in because sometimes families are forced into extreme poverty, and that's one way of their coping mechanism. So they are disproportionately affected. So how can we address that? What are some of the success stories? One is that any intervention that we do, they should not be what we call as gender balance. And one way we could do that is involve women and young people, especially girls, in the response and when we design the response mechanisms. One of the example I can personally give from all around the world, working in many countries, every time there has been a disaster scenario, people live in camp settings, they put toilets outside the camps, but they don't lit the path. So men are able to go, but women are not able to use them. Another example I have seen is also during disasters. We give relief packages. There is wash items, there are clothes, but the sanitary pads, they are not included. And during disaster situation, women are not able to go and buy them. And how I keep on telling them is, when you design an intervention, do consult with women, do consult with girls. So these responses and their need come to the forefront. And that is one way that we have been able to ensure that the unique needs of women and girls are taken into account.
Thank you so much, Sriram. That's very, very interesting. I also want to share recently what we've done at the foundation is that, with the heat waves, you all know with temperatures in Gujarat, for example, rising to 48, 49 degrees, it's really hard for women, especially salt pan workers. I've spent time with them. We've come out with, we're piloting an insurance product whereby when the temperatures go above a certain limit, women will not have to go out and work, but the insurance will kick in. So I think more and more we need to be looking for innovations in this space because there's a lot more that can be done. I'll now turn to you, Mehnaz. We've heard a lot about women, so I'll change to a different topic, and something that is very close to your heart, where you are responsible for trade and development. So when it comes to climate, how are you really integrating? Because I can imagine it's tough, right? On one side is trade, and we're seeing everything that needs to be done. The decarbonization piece is something which is really a tough call, because how do you manage growth? The decarbonization. So we'd love to hear your thoughts as to how you're integrating this within the climate change reversal that all of us are looking for.
Thank you. Thank you, Deepali. And really, it's a very interesting session, starting from an estuarine example to something very basic. And really, as a woman, very close to all of our hearts is that the challenges which are faced by the society. I'll take this discussion now to a little way forward of where we are looking at climate, mainly coming from a US government arm of providing assistance for infrastructure projects in emerging markets. So when we talk climate and when we bring in projects mainly in the infrastructure sector, there's a lot of disconnect which is there, and there's a lot of disconnect also in the language which has to be spoken and which has to be adopted as more projects. We are seeing construction around us, left, right and center, any part of the world these days if you travel, including within India or even in the region or in the developing economies, construction is really the key. So infrastructure is growing. Betterment, COVID also taught us the importance of digitization, so everyone is in a hyper path of digitization, which is very important. And in all this, how do we cover climate? So for our agency, US Trade and Development Agency, climate is really at the center of all our discussions, all our projects and all our activities which we are funding in India and in the region. And to begin with, when this mandate was strengthened further in the current administration, for India being a very diverse country, I think a lot of India actually sits for us in the interior hinterlands. It does not sit in the dialogues which happen here in Delhi, in a very well air-conditioned building. A lot of challenges are where probably Mr. Shetty is coming from, or what you are addressing in Gujarat. So, we are a big believer in the public-private partnership. And so the first thing first which we did as the new mandate of the new administration came 3.5 years ago to us was set up a climate technology action group. Because the technology which we are discussing about bringing from US to India or integrating with Indian infrastructure sector has to have that climate resilience inbuilt. That thought process has to be from the beginning. And interestingly, usually in my sessions, I would like to talk about successful projects, which is very interesting for Deepali to say, let's talk about what doesn't work. So yes, we do work in ports, and I'll give you an example of working on a project for almost a year and a half with India in port sector, which was very important, and still there is a lot of pressure from us to make sure that every project has a climate impact very thoroughly inbuilt. Earlier, our projects by nature have a financial viability and economic viability. Now it's important for us to have a sustainability viability built in. And so when we were looking at a new stream of ports coming up in one part of India, we could not move the project from Washington. The biggest reason was that the port has to commit to not importing hydrocarbon anymore, which is something which, as a paradigm, as an Indian working for US government, sitting here, I can understand the pains of an emerging world to what the developing world is dictating. But that's where our act comes in, is to help balance the impact of, we can't today turn off everything hydrocarbon and move to everything solar and wind. And so the other successful project which we were doing during this whole time frame of trying to find more economic viable projects was in Gujarat, actually in Kutch region, a very small entrepreneur who moved from a property development business to bringing in more of renewable integration into the grid to set up a 330 megawatt of wind and solar storage with battery storage in the Dwarka region. So we are trying to see the diversity of bringing more of medium and small size companies, innovative companies onto the table, having a more engaging dialogue where what works right now for India may not be where US is having a perspective at the moment, but this is going to be a transition journey, and I think as human beings who are all responsible, it's everyone's responsibility. It's just not one government or one institution. Thank you.
Thank you, Mehnaz. And I think just coming out of G20, we've seen just the fact that there's been a full consensus in terms of the declaration. What India's really been able to show in how climate is being front and center is quite encouraging. The point that you made around the global south, I think again, if you're looking at countries across the world, this is really a moment when you're looking at the climate crisis. We can't have the global north be telling us what needs to be done in a place like India or any country, in fact, across the region, because there's just so much of local learning that is going to be important. There's the contextualization of where the country is in its own growth trajectory. So all these things are going to be very important. I think we have a minute and a half left. What I'll do is quickly ask each one of you in probably about 30 seconds, just share whether you see any role of public-private philanthropic collaboration as we're looking at the climate crisis, and one call to action for the audience. We will not get a chance of asking questions, but what is one thing that you really want to get people to act on?
I think people have to think big, exponential, bring in massive resources to the hinterlands, to the rural landscapes, and have that courage to fail. It doesn't matter if you don't succeed, as long as you have the return on nature, return on community. That's what I would say.
Well said. Over to you, Sriram.
Thanks, Deepali. On your first question, private-public partnership, yes, absolutely. For any initiative to be successful, you need policies, you need programs, you need partnerships, and you need financing. So just not public-private partnership, all the other partners whom we could get, it could be academic institutions, media, NGO, the community, all of us need to come together, absolutely. On the call to action, I will again go back to the issue of gender, which is close to my heart. Although women face the brunt of the climate change hazards, impact, unfortunately, their voice is not being heard in the policies and the responses. So one call to action I would say is do involve women, do involve young people, especially young girls, when you are designing and planning climate change policies and action plans.
Excellent. Over to you, Mehnaz.
So I think I would totally agree with both what my speakers have said and what you have alluded to, Deepali. I would just add that it's very important to understand the crosswalk for whichever realm we are living in. We are all doing our jobs, maybe as a philanthropic institution, as a policy maker, as a private sector. it's very important for climate, and as we are looking for a world for ourselves to live in, not the jobs which we are doing. We need to have that crosswalk to understand that if we are working in the energy space, how does that really impact the transportation space? How does that really impact the digitization space, and where is it all taking us? So that's very important, I think, from a top level. Also very important for looking at larger projects, but seeing the impact to the last person or the last mile where the impact of the project is going to be. So it has to be more holistic planning. And I think for the call forward, the agenda of this event with the three very powerful words which they've used is collaboration, resilience and financing. I would focus on the third one more, is to make that enabling of that effort from a kokum butter to a solar wind storage plant, or salt workers in Gujarat, that financing and making that available a little more easy, so that people can think of it not as not as something which is more philanthropic, but which is more doable and can have an action on the ground. Thank you.
Thank you. So just to sum up, I think what we really need when we're looking at the climate crisis is we need cross-sectoral collaboration. We need to get all the unusual actors together, so everybody in the ecosystem matters. It's also important that how do we synergize and harmonize efforts, because what is the need of the hour is scalable solutions. We can keep testing, developing and doing piloting work, but that's not really going to help us to address the climate crisis. So how do we work together to really go after the scalable solutions? And in the process, we'll have to innovate. I think we're living in a world where technology can play such an important role, and we will have to take risks. For some of us who come from the philanthropic world, we look at our resources as high-risk capital, and we are encouraged to take more risks. So, wherever there are those opportunities, we will not shy away and work together. I think, also what I heard very strongly from this panel is really let's keep the people who are being impacted the most, whether it's women, whether it's young girls, it's marginalized communities, front and center in all our conversations, whether it's with policymakers, whether it's the private sector, or it's think tanks, because, that's where we really need to get things to change. And the last thing I'll say is that, each one of us can act. It's not that we have to be looking at, hey, this is what government needs to do, this is what the private sector needs to do. When it comes to climate, in our own individual behaviors, we can make a lot of changes, and every action is important. So let's not undermine what we can do individually, and of course what we can do as a community, what we can do as a nation. And climate has no boundaries. It's affecting each and every one of us. It can't be that India kind of deals with the crisis. It's going to be affected by the rest of the world. So let's really forge together and really try and reverse the climate crisis. Thank you so much.